Perfect. Right. Hi, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mark Unwin, and colleagues here, just a camera.
Seth Shenbanja.
And Lorna Stockwood.
Hi, and we're from askKira, and we were asked by Life to come and talk a little bit about some of the usages in askKira that might be helpful, but also to get a sense from you in terms of how it's going with the introduction of askKira, what usage you're using it for at the moment, any support that we can offer for things that you might want to use it for. So I thought one of the things we could do, there's basically loads of different ways of showing you how it might work across the organisation. But probably the best way we've found with multi-academy trusts is to borrow a term which turns a lot of people off, but to borrow a term from the tech industry, which is to have what's almost like a hackathon, basically, where we try to show you how Kira gets used, but also where you can take part in that and you can show us how you might use it, and we can try to come with the best possible way that the product can be used to help you and solve the problems that you might have. So it'd be really helpful if you've got Kira open in front of you at the moment, if you've got your login for Kira, if you can actually open it up and have it open on your screen at the same time, it would be really, really helpful at certain points for you to have it open. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that while we introduce ourselves. So I'm Mark Unwin. In my day job, I'm the CEO of a multi-academy trust in Birmingham. We educate just under 3,000 children in areas experiencing significant deprivation around the city. And Seth and Lorna and myself founded askKira about 12 months ago now, to really try to do two things. So to solve some of the really big problems in education, and to do that by helping people with their workload and their well-being. And then the overall aim of the company and the idea is that by doing that, we can also gather loads and loads and loads of data about how education's working in the UK, and that share that widely across the sector and across multi-academy trusts and across with the government to understand how to make what I still think is the best job in the world even better. So that's the sort of overall aim of what we're trying to do. To do that, we first of all invented askKira, which you've all got access to, and I'll just create a new chat. Can everybody see that screen? Is anybody not able to see the screen? Okie dokie. And we started to think about what are those really big questions that people might have. And we were talking to Life originally, and one of those big questions, and it's not the only one, but one of the big questions is around how do we support the most vulnerable children in our schools, and how do we use askKira to do that? So I thought what we could do today is I'll show you how I might use, or some of our other trusts and other users have used Kira to support the most vulnerable children in our schools through three or four different ways, but also we can share how you've already been using it, how you might use it. You can actually have a play during this session as well and share what's worked and what's not worked during that opportunity to try it. So as if you've not used askKira before, it's an AI education assistant. It's basically the same. It's been programmed to be a colleague, somebody from the staff room, somebody in the corridor, and you wake it up by saying, hi, Kira. It's conversational in tone, so it's different from ChatGPT. It has the same large language model underpinning it from OpenAI that ChatGPT has, but it also has the programming of initially 103 people, head teachers, senior leaders, Senkos, teachers, pupil support assistants, and pastoral mentors and leads that trained it to not only have all the information that ChatGPT has, but also has all the information that they think is really important to somebody working within any UK school. So it knows all the key documents, it understands national curriculum, it also understands like school teachers pay and conditions document, the SEN code of practice, the Ofsted EIF, and all the key documents you'll need. And what it does is it synthesizes the information that's within ChatGPT with all the extra information that it knows about working within a UK school. And by doing that, it gives answers that are much more precise, much more tailored to somebody working within a school, which has the advantage of the fact that it needs less editing than ChatGPT would need. And second from that, it's not discoverable that it's been created by an AI, which is really useful as we all become more adept at using AI. So I thought if we were looking at supporting the most vulnerable children, I was thinking like, how do we do that within schools? Well, there's like sort of 3 or 4 ways that we might start. So I was thinking about pre-teaching, okay? And the way that you use Kira, as you probably know, is you just talk to it as you would somebody in the classroom. So, hi Kira, how's your day going so far? Great, thanks. You'll notice in a minute that I've got the worst typing in the world, which is ironic given that my mum is was a lecturer in typing at North Trafford College, next to Old Trafford cricket ground, and she'd be horrified to see me type. So I say, great, thanks. This afternoon, I am teaching one for the primary school. So I am teaching year 5 about biomes in geography. I have a new child in my class, new to country, and I need a pre-teaching resource to explain different biomes for him. Please, can you draft me something? So we ask it what we need, and it'll check for understanding. So how about a simple visual guide with images of biomes? You can include sections for the rainforest, desert, tundra, and grasslands. Brilliant. Please, can you draft me an explanatory text for him? And it'll do that. So we'll talk about rainforest, deserts, tundras, and grassland. And always helps if you're talking to any AI, Kira or any other, if you say please and thank you, because research shows that saying please and thank you to your AI means that you get much better results out of it. Brilliant, thanks. However, he only speaks Farsi. Please, can you draft it for me? And says it can't translate it. And it'll draft the text above, and it'll draft it in Farsi, so that when we're pre-teaching that resource, the child who's new to country, Farsi speaker, has something to read in advance of the lesson, and it's an effective pre-teaching resource for that child to use to access the lesson better. So I wondered, to start off with, you'll have seen that I use the word draft, right? So there's a reason we use the word draft with Kira and with our large language models, and that's to do with trying to tell it precisely what we're trying to do. And as Kira has been programmed to be an assistant to people that work in schools, it knows that we're then going to edit that. So if we use the word draft, that means that it'll produce something, and then we can go on and edit it rather than write it or create a document, which is a more definitive prompt. So I wondered if you've got Kira open at the moment, do you want to have a go at that? So try and draft a pre-teaching resource in a language. If you've got any multilingual speakers in your school, or your schools serve communities with different languages, have a go now at asking it to generate a pre-teaching resource in a language that's relevant to your setting. And then hopefully we can share some results of that, if anybody's brave enough. While people are doing that, I might just share my screen and do another one. So I would open a new chat with the plus arrow at the top, just clear the original one. can you draft me a pre-teaching resource for year 8 design tech about principles of design in Wellbeing. And then it checks key design principles, definitions, and examples. And then we ask him to draft it. And then it's generated the pre-teaching resource, and it's given the Urdu vocabulary for the different vocabulary that the child might need to access the lesson. Okay, who's prepared to share? Hands up, anybody brave enough to share? Andy, brilliant, go for it. Have you got sharing rights?
Yeah, I'll share the screen.
Perfect.
I think it's this one.
No problem, Taylor.
There we go. So, I mean, this is something I'm doing with my kids anyway. So, just asking it to maybe create a sequence of lessons for me, give it a little bit of information about how much teacher talk I want to do versus practical elements. So this is teaching my students a programming concept. Generate sort of like, I didn't phrase that question very well at all, but generate a teacher resource. So it just provides me with a little breakdown, which is quite nice. But then that pre-teaching resource for lesson 1, just to kind of give me a bit more breakdown into what I could demonstrate to my class, which is essentially this pretty much what I do all the time. It's always a dog or a cat or something like that, which is, it's quite common. Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to really kind of reflect on that and have a conversation with it, but yeah, it's quite straightforward. And I'd say the order that it's presented in terms of progression is quite sensible. So yeah, that was quite nice.
Andy, that's absolutely fantastic. Seth, our CTO, is sat next to me. He's loving the fact that this code just appeared on the screen. I think.
Yeah. So yeah, this is quite. I do find like most AI is pretty good with the whole, when it comes to computer science kind of questions and stuff, and generating code, very helpful. Yeah. So yeah, quite good.
Amazing. Thanks, Andy. That's great. Who else is prepared to share? We've got an echo. Try and get rid of it. Go on. Who else is prepared to share? Anybody managed to get a pre-teaching resource in another language other than English? This is putting people on the spot, I appreciate. If not, we're going to move on. Go on. Somebody can share the next one. Oh, there we go.
Hi. I couldn't actually get it to translate into Ukrainian.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or not. I don't know if I can.
Probably not. Probably we won't be doing anything wrong. A lot of it is to do with they're programmed not to not to translate directly. So a lot of it's in how you ask it, right? So please, can you? What was it you were trying to try? I mean, what do you teach?
Maths, and it was just a basic word problem with basic maths operations.
Okay, so please generate me a mathematics word problem with multi-use operations or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
What class? What year group? Sorry.
This is low bottom set for weak ability.
Year 7 sort of bottom set.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. And Sarah's 24 cupcakes.
Yeah, that looks good.
See if I can get it to do it. Okay, tell you what we'll do is we'll work on it separately on the side here and see if we can work out what the prompt is for getting it to generate it in Ukrainian. I know that like Farsi, for instance, draft works, but Seth's sat alongside me now, so we'll work on that as we move on to the next one. Great, that's fantastic. That's perfect perfect example from a hackathon idea. Okie dokie. Right. So the next thing we wondered about doing is how we might do adaptation for children in a lesson. So go back to sharing my screen and new chat with the plus arrow on the left hand side. So we might say hi Kira to wake it up. Then one of those things I was thinking in terms of adaptation is how we might simplify an explanatory text. So something like, I'm teaching year 9 history this afternoon. We are discussing the causes of World War I. Please, can you generate me simplified text for the start of the lesson to adapted by doing it with a reading age of 8 years old. So the idea behind this is that if we were to start each lesson by adapting the initial text to the lowest reading age of the children in the class, and then building up the knowledge over the course of the time that we do the introduction, then all the children will be able to access the first bit, and then everybody would be supported, and then we can make it gradually more complex as we go along, supporting the children that obviously that are being more stretched by the reading age as we go through, but everybody has access to the basics of the lesson. So you can see there that it really has totally simplified the language within the introduction of the lesson. And then we might move that on. So move the lesson on. What would be the next possible cause? Please move the reading age up to 11 years of age. And then it talks about the alliance system, and it talks about agreements being called alliances and promises that were made between the different country. And then we can continue to move that on. So we're effectively scaffolding as we go along and adapting for different reading ages within the classroom. And we're making it more and more complex, bringing the learning to the lesson of the class. So brilliant. Please move it on again to the more complex causes with the reading age of 14. And then it's moved on to talking about militarism. So we're adapting each of the resources, and it's specific to a year 8 or 9 class looking at World War I, but we've managed to adapt the text as we've gone along to make it more relevant to the different reading ages within the class. So do you want to have a go at that? Just about, looking at your subjects, looking at primary or secondary, how you might use it to adapt a particular subject. Don't do history because I've just done it. Literally pick another subject and how you might use it to adapt the learning teaching resources at the beginning of the lesson. In the meantime, I'm going to open it up. Might do a primary one this time. My background is as a primary school teacher. I've got an empty chat open already. I am teaching year 2 science about the life cycle. Please, can you adapt me brief introduction for children with reading age of with emergent reading. And this would be something that you or a teaching assistant might read to the children. Hello, year 2. Today we're going to explore the amazing journey of living things. Have you seen a butterfly? It starts tiny eggs, grow into caterpillars and transform into beautiful butterflies. Let's discover more about life cycles. So sometimes it might be something that you adapt, and sometimes it might be something that it writes for you to read. So who's going to be brave enough to share what they've been doing to adapt to the learning resources for whatever subject it is? Sarah, Alice. Oh, hand up, Mr. Cleed. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just switching my equipment on.
No problem at all. I know the feeling.
Yeah, I used it for an ethics question for computer science, and I tried to split it up into reading abilities, because obviously we have mixed ability groups, so sometimes we can have quite low ability children within our groups.
Yeah.
So I've changed it to say, look, give me same question but rewritten for an age 13 years, age 14 years, and then 15 years.
Yeah.
I had to tweak it slightly and just say, look, this is what I'm expecting. Can you hurry up and get it done, please?
Yeah.
I'm quite forceful when it comes to my AI. I don't know, start including some thank yous and pleases. But yeah, it's got it done quite nicely. So the 4 age 13.
Can you share it? Can we say it?
I could try. I've got a really tiny screen, so it's a bit hard for me to share. I don't think mine's working.
I think it's fascinating. I'm guessing, Alice was on before, from primary school, like to see like it working across age groups and how like different, how different settings and how different like primary see and how secondary use it and stuff is really fascinating for people.
Yeah.
So there is a way.
Yeah, mine's just, it's not.
Is it not
nice right now?
It's always the way.
But I could just quickly read it out. For age 13, it's why is it important to be honest when using technology? Can you give one example of being dishonest? And for a 15-year-old, why is honesty crucial when using technology? Provide one example of unethical behavior related to technology. So as we know, slight little tweaks have a big impact on the child's understanding of the question. So that's pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I think, you can see the difference in the reading ages. There's a whole different question, about how AIs work out reading ages and writing ages, which we've been talking about recently. And I'll come back to that another time, but I think it's fascinating because actually some of the bias that's within the large language model actually comes out in the reading ages, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Taylor's just joined the chat. She said, my quote work was I asked it to write a narrative inspired by Beowulf for year 6 and asked it to level up the vocabulary for my more able children so we could compare. Yeah, I think a fantastic use, not just to support the most vulnerable children, but also to use it to stretch the more able children. And involved in an Ofsted inspection recently, the focus had very much switched from adaptation and scaffolding within the least able children, and also was very much in terms of how lessons were being sort of scaffolded and adapted to stretch the more able children. So I think Kira is a great way of doing that. Wonderful. So we've done about pre-teaching. I've done about adaptation. One of the things that's coming out in an awful lot of Ofsted reports at the moment is a sort of general comment. And Lorna and I were talking about before, a school that she's involved in. We were talking about how establishing prior learning is often now coming out as an AFI within, or a common AFI within Ofsted inspections. And so we might say, that they so we might do this, right? I'm going to make this, I initially was going to do this as being I'm going to do it as a secondary school question, but primary colleagues, if you could jump in and do a primary version, this would be amazing, right? So I might say, hi Kira, and it'll come back to me. So I might say, I am teaching about understanding the component components and processes that maintain balance within ecosystems. So that's what I'm teaching. And as I say, primary colleagues, if you can just pick a lesson you can think of where you tell it what the learning objective of the lesson would be. So please, can you give me a question that would establish whether the children have the most important prior knowledge to access the lesson. So we know that we're about to teach about understanding the components and processes that maintain a balance within ecosystems. The question we should be asking, and too often I think, and I think this is Ofsted's point at the moment, too often our overlearning, our pre-teaching, our elicitation question at the beginning of the lesson is based on prior knowledge that has come from a curriculum resource or something to do with some overlearning of what we did this week, this term, last year, or whatever it might be. And what they're increasingly wanting to see is elicitation questions at the beginning of lessons to elicit whether the children have the prior knowledge to actually access the lesson and to find out and to gauge what their level of learning is at the start of the lesson. And we might do that by asking, what do you think happens to plants and animals within their environment changes? And most importantly with Kira, it'll give you the answer. They might mention how changes can affect food sources, habitats, and the health of plants and animals. It'll lead to discussions about adaptation and the importance of balance in ecosystems. And I think from my experience recently, this is going to be an increasingly important part of the new Ofsted framework. Their focus very much seems to be moving away from the idea that the beginning of a lesson, you know, the implementation model within a lesson that's based on prior learning and overlearning, rather than knowing key facts which they might link to their schema. It's actually starting the lesson maybe with some overlearning to keep it in their working memory, but specifically to ask questions at the beginning of the lesson to elicit whether they have the prior knowledge for that particular lesson. And I've seen what we were talking about before, weren't we? I think 5 Ofsted inspections recently where that's been almost a carbon copy AFI. So I think that's going to be something that, if you've got an Ofsted inspection looming at one of your schools, that might be something that you could use, Kira, across your staff team to say, if you're going to teach this lesson, think about an elicitation question that just checks for the prior learning, prior understanding before teaching the lesson. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for that. Right. So who's going to share me one of those? If you can just have a go, especially primary colleagues, sorry to put you on the spot, but if you could just go through that, think about a lesson that's being taught in your school, ask it to come up with what the elicitation question would be to check for prior knowledge, prior understanding before moving into the lesson as per Ofsted's latest focus. While you do that, I'm just going to, I'll just run another one. I'll run a primary one as well. And then if somebody could share for me. I am teaching about light and the eye in Year 6 Science. What is the elicitation question I might ask at the beginning to check the prior learning and to understand if children have the knowledge to access the lesson. What do you know about how light travels and how our eyes help us see? The answer we'd be looking for would be something about light traveling in straight lines, that our eyes detect light, or we see because light reflects off objects. Right, can we put somebody on the spot? Somebody possibly share for us a way that we might in their setting elicit elicit, you know, for prior knowledge. We might use Kira to elicit for prior knowledge. Alice, any chance? I'd really like a primary one. It would be amazing if we could see her.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure how to share my screen, but
That's always the dead.
sorry. So the question I put to it was, I'm teaching about gravity to a year 5 class. Can you give me a question that establishes whether the children have any prior knowledge ready to access that lesson? And what it came up with is, what do you think happens to an object if you drop it? Why do you think this will happen? Which is a good starting question.
100%. That's amazing. That's great, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so I mean, I'm glad you did that one as well, because it's difficult, that one, isn't it? Because we don't know where gravity's been taught. I mean, it's probably come up quite a few times, isn't it? But it's not something you'd necessarily have discreetly taught. It wouldn't necessarily be on a knowledge organizer somewhere, would it, in year 2 or something like that? But it'll have come up in reading, or it'll have come up in, when they were doing about space, or
usually in later years in primary.
100%, yeah. And yet children sort of know it, don't they? But we don't know whether they know it, and some children will know it and some children won't know it, and all that. And I think it's fascinating that we're moving more towards those sort of elicitation questions, rather than, I can only talk about myself, and Lorna was saying the same thing before. The use of Kahoot is a really cool, engaging tool for children, but sometimes it becomes a bit like pub quizzy, doesn't it, rather than actually the learning that they need to actually engage with the lesson. And it's really changed my thinking, actually, the fact that that's become a focus of inspections. Thanks so much. Sorry to put you on the spot. That's amazing. Okay, if nobody else has got one, I'm going to move on. So we might, so we've talked about adaptation, we've talked about pre-teaching, we've talked about how we might use it to establish prior learning. So there's something else that we might do. If we're thinking about supporting the most vulnerable children, we might use any of those techniques to do that. But of course, we also have lots of information about the children, don't we? So one of the things, and this is very emergent, we've only just started using Kira to do this, and not so widely, but it seems to be something that, as we develop it, and I wanted you to all have a go and see what you could share, is we can use it to support us during pupil progress review meetings, or IEP meetings, or SEND meetings, or as a way of actually dialing in on individual children's needs. So to do that, we need to obviously give the children information. Now, in the future, and Seth's sat next to me now, in the future, we'll be able to do this by extracting from the MIS directly to make this much, much quicker. But in the meantime, we can still do it. So we might say, great, thanks. I'm in a pupil progress review. We are talking about Mohammed in year 5. Mohammed has attendance of 92.4%, PA of 24.6%. His SS for reading is 96. He is at early help. He was new to country in year 2. He has 2 siblings. Literally anything that we might want to put. He loves animals. Who knows? Something about Mohammed, right? So then, please, can you suggest what might be a good target to work with Mohammed this week, this half term, and this should go. So set a goal for him to read a story about animals, summarise it, half term aim for him to increase his standardised score by 5 points through targeted activities, and the year encourage him to join a reading club based on animal themed stories. So we might think, we haven't got a reading club focused on animal themed stories, but we might look at that targeted activities in the half term. So great. So we copy this. Please, can you create a list of 5 suggestions and then copy that bit. So 50 minutes of independent daily reading, guided reading, provide small group sessions, a book project, a peer reading buddy, to incorporate some audiobooks, related documentaries on animals to engage them in different formats while boosting comprehension. So we might say this one here about the reading club. Okay, thanks. We don't have a reading club focusing on animals themed stories. What else could we do? And it'll produce some different alternatives to a reading club, and some of those might work for you in your school, some of them might work for Mohammed, some of them might be something that you can do or build into your existing curriculum. And one of the things about Kira is that it becomes a conversation between you and the assistant in terms of what might work using your professional judgment and the individual circumstances around his school. We might also say, what about his attendance? And it'll suggest ways of doing that with his to include his attendance in terms of communicating with family about the importance of attendance, and they can encourage him. And then you could say, can you write me a plan for that bit? And it'll generate a nice attendance plan where we can schedule a meeting, share strategies, explore barriers, create a supportive environment, do follow-up, and that sort of thing. So very quickly, we can generate really nice plans for individual pupils, looking at their particular barriers to learning, supporting the most vulnerable children. And we can do that at individual pupil level. So everybody want to have a go at that. Literally give it whatever information you want to give it about an individual child. Think about a real child or a mythical child, and give it as much information. Please don't use first and last names, because obviously we want it to be GDPR compliant. So just keep it to first names or initials, and then just put an individual child's circumstances in there and give it as much information as you can. See what it comes up with as a suggestion for that individual child. And then if somebody would be prepared to share, that would be amazing. In the meantime, I'm going to open up a new one. Perfect. The Ukrainian is now working. We've got a solution to the Ukrainian thing, so we'll come back to you with that. I mean, pupil progress review. The child, Ella, is in year 2. She's shy. She has high attendance, but struggles in maths. She is under attack. Please, can you suggest something to help her this half term? Pairing and supporting peer joint activities, create a safe environment for her to share idea. So some tips to creating a supportive environment. Talk about modeling vulnerability, talking about group norms, using small groups, things like that. So those things are things that you're going to do anyway, because like as professionals, we know what works, or we have experience of some of the things that work. And some of those things might be things you haven't thought of. Some of your team might not have thought of. Some of the less experienced teachers might not have thought of. So that's the idea of Kira, is taking the hive mind of the 103 people that programmed it originally, and generating, alongside the large language model from OpenAI, generating some really cool ideas that might prompt some discussion or might help along the way. So who's prepared to share an example of how they've used it for an individual child, maybe within their school?
Hi, I'm partway through mine. So I've got a student that has really low attention spans, and I've got a new year 7 form, and loads of them are amazing at blitzing through books and getting loads of reward points for it. But this one student struggles to sit for a certain amount of time. So far, I've got, considering breaking reading sessions into shorter focus intervals, and I'm a math specialist, and like, I'm not, this is all a little new to me, all the English side of things and what have you, and getting kids to, like, I know I've done it in the past, but it's been a while. I've got to incorporate engaging activities related to a reading material. So my next question is going to be, what engaging activities could you suggest? I just haven't got to that point yet. With to then see what it spouts out, that hopefully that'll give me ideas to then get her really engaged, and make some progress, and hopefully that then develop over time, make her more resilient, I think.
And that's a brilliant example, and it's so hard, isn't it, when you're like crossing two domains in terms of like one particular type of, one particular subject, and then you're crossing a domain into another subject, and hopefully it helps with that. Thanks for that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And then in the chat, Andy, is askKira a GDPR compliant question? Yeah, absolutely. Seth, do you want to talk about GDPR compliance?
Hi. Yep, sure. So everything we do from a systems perspective is all GDPR compliant. We utilize servers which are based in London, so we're on Amazon Web Services stack, we're on private servers there. The best practice, which is why Mark mentioned GDPR compliance, is to not enter these data points. Of course, from our side, we ensure all possible security, but for even a more anthropological example, there's someone stood over your shoulder, you don't want to mistakenly expose a safeguarding risk. So it's more for the environmental risk that exposed. But from a systems perspective, all compliant and all secure at the point of access. Data is, for example, both encrypted at rest and also in transit.
Thanks.
And then
I just wanted to say, you mentioned it like about the GDPR part, and the best practice is not to share names and stuff, but then I wasn't sure how that would work with like the Kira mark and the Kira test element. So that's just I was asking, but I know it was a bit off topic, that's why I put it in the chat. I don't want to detract from what you're covering right now, but I just wanted to have that question there, so staff are aware.
100%. I think it's a really, really valuable question. And actually, I think that not using first and last names is the best tip. Use initials or whatever is a decent identifier. With the marking tool, we're working on an identifier using QR codes at the moment. So there might be a different way in terms of identification for that going forward. It's not actually to do with GDPR. It's just to do with speed. But we'll roll that out if we can get it working. Perfect. Anybody else want to share before we, just conscious of time, anybody want to share how it's helped with an individual pupil? Anybody in primary? Would UPNs break data GDPR? I probably would stay away from UPNs just because of the identifiable nature. It's a great question, I think, in terms of the identifiable nature of the children from the GDPR. It would be stored and transited securely.
It's exactly that point. It's stored and transited securely, but it's more the GDPR of necessity. If you can identify it in a way without, then of course it's best practice just in the event of. GDPR is about prevention as opposed to actually risk. The risk, as it were, is hopefully low because we do have highest necessary security standards, like we are other systems. So how we integrate with you is actually via one that we have to surpass all their data privacy necessities to actually get access to your schools and your staff.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thanks, Bob. Okay, so we've looked at how we can use askKira to support the most vulnerable children, talked about how we can use it for pre-teaching resources, adapting lessons, establishing prior learning, scaffolding, multi-language scaffolding, and how we might use it to think about how we support individual vulnerable children, drilling into what their specific barriers to learning might be. It'll go as deep as you want it to go, and I think you're probably seeing that now. The idea with Kira is to just keep going as deep as you would want to go. we are going to finish there, if that's all right. We're just going to, for the last couple of minutes, any questions from anybody, any thoughts, any ways that you're using it at the moment that you wanted to share with the group, because I think these groups are a really important way of spreading the message to hundreds, thousands of people, and because it doesn't just help users within the life community, all the community of tens of thousands of users of Kira eventually get to share in the best practice through our community work. So if anybody's got any really cool stuff that they've done or anything that they want to share, that would be great if you put it in the chat. And in the meantime, Lorna, Ukrainian is working?
It is, yeah.
Fantastic. What's the prompt that you would use? Would you?
Any prompt now.
Oh, any prompt is now working. So
let's test
well, let's test it. Let's say, put me on the spot now. So, hi Kira, I am teaching multiple operation word problems in year 7. Bottom set. Please, can I have an example? Generate me. Brilliant, thanks. Please, can you draft it in Ukrainian? Thank you to the tech team. So that's the whole point of having a hackathon, is so we can find out the stuff that's working well, find out the stuff that's still needs some development work, and get on it to assist you, and most importantly, to assist the children that it can support across all our schools. Thank you so much for joining us. If anybody has any questions, we can be reached at help@askKira.com. I'm looking for, yes, help@askKira.com. So askKira.com, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for logging in. Hope you have a good rest of the night. Hope the Halloween party is marvellous for our primary colleagues that are joining it, and goodbye to Benji, the school dog. Thanks all. Thanks. Nice to see you. Bye-bye. Stop recording.